Hello, welcome to Permission to be Full and Fully You. I'm really happy to be back with you today. I was out sick last week, so there's been a little bit of a gap, and I want to name that. I want to catch us up to speed so that we can all be here together. And then I'm going to go ahead and launch into our talk. I'm not fully 100% recovered, so you're going to have to bear with me if I cough, sneeze, need to pause, that kind of thing. But here we go. Yeah. All right. So I just want to fill us in, first of all, catch us up with where we've been. We've been exploring what it means to give yourself permission to be full and to be fully who you are. In the first session, we explored Bernard of Clairvaux's teaching that we should strive to be a reservoir rather than a channel. Bernard of Clairvaux was a Middle Ages mystic, monk, and quite a prolific writer. And this was his teaching. What he meant when he said, try to be a reservoir, not a channel, was that we should allow ourselves to fill with divinity and be changed by it before we seek to let it overflow to other people. So often people think they want to be a channel for the divine and they want divinity to flow through them to other people. But he says, no, let it do its work inside you. Let it fill you fully, and then it will overflow naturally to other people. So we talked about that. And in the next session, we talked about the Musar teaching that humility is not about playing small. Instead, it's about filling your entire space and only your space. And that what that space looks like is different for different people and in different circumstances. We don't all get the same space, but we all have space. We're all supposed to take up space. Today, we're going to go somewhere a little more uncomfortable, a little bit more challenging. I'm going to start by saying something that could seem a little controversial. So I'm just going to come out and say it. People find a way to get what they are genuinely prioritizing. People get their top priorities. Not what they say they want, but what they are actually prioritizing. So I know that you're probably going to go to some example about somebody in a war-torn country, but you're here watching this. So let's think a little closer to home. Let's think about some examples we see all the time. The person who can't find time to exercise, but watches 3 hours of television a day. The executive who can't make it home for dinner, who misses every family meal and every recital, but never misses a tea time. The small business owner who can't make it to a networking event, but spends hours doom scrolling. The coach who cannot seem to find time to develop her own work, but is available for everyone else's. The woman who's almost ready to do the thing. She's been almost ready for a long time now, but she just needs to get through this other thing, and then she'll do the main thing. The one who gives generously to everyone except herself. Now, this is not a judgment. I'm not judging anybody when I point these things out. I'm just talking about how human motivation works and kind of how consequences work too. We're remarkably resourceful when something really matters to us. When something truly, truly matters, we can make it happen when we make it our priority. So I want to talk to you about a little bit about where I learned this. And I get that this can seem controversial to say, but I'm going to share with you where I learned this. Growing up, I had a brother. He was 10 years older than I was. And when I was 11, I discovered that he had been shooting heroin for a couple of years already. He struggled with polysubstance dependence his entire adult life and eventually died of complications of intravenous drug abuse when he was 49 years of age. I grew up in the same house he grew up in. I know exactly why he shot heroin. I know what he was trying not to feel. I know what was happening in our home behind the bar in the far south suburbs of Chicago. I don't need to imagine it. And I don't share this story to judge him. In fact, I often don't talk about my brother because I don't want other people to judge him. And I've never judged him. I tell this story because of what I've learned from him and because I still love him all these years later. So I want to go back in time. My brother, by the time he was in his early 20s, had lost his driver's license because he had had so many DUIs that the state of Illinois told him he could not have a driver's license unless he dealt with his addiction, unless he dealt with his alcoholism. They weren't going to give him a driver's license again. And he refused to go to AA. As a result of this, he wasn't able to drive himself for work in the morning. So, and he was still living with my mom in his mid-20s. He needed someone to come pick him up for work. He couldn't get there on his own. His best friend, Dean, came over every morning to wake him up and get him out the door. And Dean usually arrived somewhere around the time when I was getting myself ready for school. And Dean would chit-chat with me while I got ready for high school, waiting for my brother to get ready for work. And that was how my brother got to work. He couldn't wake himself up, couldn't drive himself there. But when he needed drugs, he would ride his bicycle. And one day I saw him get on that bike in the rain and ride 3 miles away to get more drugs. And the minute I saw him ride off on that bike in the rain to get more drugs, I understood it. Not with contempt, not with judgment, with recognition. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't weak. He was prioritizing the one thing in that moment that felt like relief from things that were unbearable to him. Now, I thought of it when I was younger, I thought of addiction as soul sickness. His part system had learned that heroin, that drug use, and only these escapist routes were the only things that worked to dull the pain. And that made them extremely important to him. And what I took away from that was not a verdict about my brother. It was a revelation about myself and about everybody I would ever work with. What I took home was that I can get what I prioritize. It landed in me and it never left. If it's really important to me, I can make it happen. And if that's true, and I have found it to be true over and over and over again, then the question for anyone who feels stuck isn't, why can't I change? The question is, what part of me is prioritizing the status quo instead of change? And what is the status quo providing me that I desperately need? Why is the status quo so important to me? Because it's not just inertia. The status quo is not just inertia. It's offering you something. It's actively providing you some good, some benefit that your system believes you need. Safety, familiarity. There might be warmth and connection. There might be a feeling of knowing who your identity is, knowing who you are, the comfort of a known complaint versus the terror of some unknown risk that you can't even possibly predict. You can have an identity of being someone who is almost there, who's working on it, who would X if only Y were not true. And that identity might feel better, might feel more comfortable than having the identity of someone who tried and failed, or maybe even worse, someone who tried and only kind of succeeded a little bit. So my brother's drug was heroin. His distraction from his pain, his way of avoiding fears was heroin and a lot of other drugs. Yours mine used to be caffeine. Yours might be busyness. Definitely there have been times when workaholism or working excessively was one of my drugs. Your drug, your way of distracting might be chronic overgiving, might be taking care of other people at your own expense. It might be a particular kind of smallness that lets you believe you're being humble. And part of you has found a very effective way of not living in alignment with your inner divinity, not doing with your life what you came here to do. And that's really what this whole series is about, the permission to be full and fully you. I believe in my core that each of us who was born came with purpose. I believe you came here because you have something to do on this planet in your days here. And I believe you're here listening to this video or reading. When you read this later, you're here because something in you knows that your reservoir is not as full as it could be. And therefore, you cannot overflow it out yet to the world. And these talks, this whole series of talks, is for that part who knows that you are here for some purpose and you're not quite living it yet. Other parts of us chose precisely this life, this status quo, this, and they had their reasons. They had good ones at one time. So part of us chose this. Parts of us, while other parts chose it, other parts think this isn't quite right. Something's just off here. I'm not quite living in alignment with who I'm supposed to be. And this isn't a character flaw. This is your part system doing exactly what it learned to do. It learned to distract from pain. It learned to protect you. And it learned that safety, however safety came about, and pain relief, however that comes about, is the most important thing. And so that's what it's doing. And it is continuing to do it in the only way it knows. That's why the status quo became the status quo. And I have this thing I think about sometimes. The present is pre-sent. So we sent ourselves this moment. We sent ourselves this present moment through the unique combination of everything we did, didn't do, said, thought, didn't say, held back from, the people we let in our lives, the people we released. We sent ourselves this present moment status quo, and it was all pre-sent with loving intention. Those parts of you who keep you busy, those parts of you who overgive, overextend, those parts of you who deny your own clarity about where you need to be going with your life, they actually are trying to help you. My brother's system to help him. I know that sounds crazy because it didn't really work effectively. It put him in harm's way all the time, but his system helped him the only way it knew at the time. But here is the honest, loving truth. If you're not happy where you are, if you feel like you're just a little bit off and you've stayed in the status quo anyway, something inside you has been choosing it. And it's not a verdict or an indictment. It's an opening. It's an opportunity to make a different choice, to set other priorities, and to take different actions. So the work here isn't to shame the parts that are prioritizing the status quo, and it's not to railroad them into doing things your way, whatever that seems like it might be. The work is simply to get curious. What are these parts protecting me from? What does this part of you believe would happen if you actually got what you say you want? Or if you lived as if what you want was truly a priority to you? What does this part that won't let you do it, what does it think will happen? What is this part afraid will happen if you succeed or if you even try? And then what will happen? And what would happen after that? These are not rhetorical questions, actually. These are questions that the clarity process I've developed is built to answer. And I will be diving into that clarity process as we go through the self led path and as we re record it. The whole clarity process is built to answer these questions in a real way so that you understand what your system thinks is at stake and you can help your system find new, updated, revised ways of navigating the pain, navigating the fear, providing the stability and security that you need. But curiosity about your parts is only half the equation. The other question, the other piece of the puzzle is one we skip because it feels presumptuous or fragile or too big. But this is also hugely part of the clarity process. Underneath it all, what do you actually want? What do you want in this chapter of your life? So maybe everything was cooking along just fine in the last chapter, and suddenly you realize, I actually don't want to go where this road is leading me anymore. I need something different, and I don't know what. But what is that? What is that different thing? The clarity process helps you discover that too. But we're not thinking about this in terms of what you think you should want or what you think makes sense based on your history or what you think your friends will approve of or your family or your partner or your business partner. What we're talking about is what does a part of you that is confident, calm, and clear, what does that part of you want to do with this chapter of your life right now? And why does it matter enough to finally take steps in that direction? Why is it worth making it a priority now? So, all of these questions, if you have an opportunity to sit down and journal on them and answer them, that would be great. If you want to share some comments in the thread, that would be fantastic. But these are the big questions. There are many others, many ways I help people get to the bottom of these questions. And I just want to say, um, and I want to go back to this. My brother was soul sick. He was very cut off from his inner divine core, his inner godliness. The part system he carried led him toward what felt to him like relief and away from what might have saved him or what might have healed him, what might have led him to contribute something more fruitful and beneficial to the world. And I'm not interested in whether you're doing the same thing. I'm interested in why, if you feel that you are not living what you ought to be living, why? And what becomes possible when you begin to understand your own inner part system. You're not broken, and this isn't beyond your capacity. You are someone whose parts have simply been running a very old program. All these old programs can be updated. All of the parts can be brought into different relationship with self and can be brought to understand the new priorities in your life. And when we talk about self leadership, what we're talking about is a situation where your parts are willing to let self lead when it comes to setting priorities. So I'm going to leave you with this one final question. And this is something I really would love for you to comment on. If you're comfortable, you can private message me if you don't want to share it publicly. But in one area of your life where you feel stuck, ask yourself this. What how might this be serving me? What might a part of me be getting from staying exactly here? And don't answer quickly. Sit with it. The answer's in there. Once you get the answer, say, oh, yes. And how is this helping? And how is that helping me? And how is that helping me? Keep asking. And how is that helping until you get no more answers? Thank you so much for your time and attention. I know that asking for 20 minutes of your time is a lot. There's a lot happening in the world. I appreciate so deeply that you're taking time to self reflect and to think through how you might live in the best possible alignment with your own inner godliness. Thanks so much.